How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm bringing you my video on how to gold every SMG in the game. This will include the BAS-P the fastest, and not only this will be a video about how to gold the gun, but I will be providing tips on polyatomic and platinum, and then I'll also be bringing you guys weapon builds for all of these challenges that you need to do. So before we get into this, there will be timestamps down below. You can click around to each weapon that you want specifically, and one thing I wanted to say is check the description. There's a lot of helpful tools of videos that I've made about camo trackers, how to level up your guns the fastest, and then you can also join my Discord, and there will be a link in the Discord for a spreadsheet that has all my weapon builds that you see in this video here, all in one place, easy access. So all you have to do to get that is join my Discord. Before we get into each gun specifically, I just want to talk about how you get gold, platinum, and poly. And basically each gun has 4 unique camo challenges, and each of those are different per gun, so we'll be talking about those later. But once you have those 4 completed, you're going to unlock the gold camo challenge, and the gold camo challenge is 3 kills without dying 10 times. And then once you get gold on 8 SMGs, you'll unlock the platinum challenge, and this will be 25 long shots. And then once you have a minimum of 51 guns platinum, you will unlock the polyatomic challenge, and then this will be 25 headshots. So that's how you get the 3 mastery camos. And then here at the beginning of the video, I wanted to talk about the easiest way to get platinum. If there is a tier 1 playlist or shoot house, definitely play that. Even though right now, currently in the game, there's no tier 1 playlist for shoot house, I would still do SMGs in tier 1, even though there's not an efficient way to do it, just because if you do it in core, you will have to hit like 10 bullets to kill someone. So you can play shoot house. It's definitely going to be way faster than playing normal core, but I would definitely just try to play tier 1. And then obviously if there's a tier 1 shoot house playlist, that will be definitely the time to do that. So that's what I would do for platinum. And then one last thing before we get into each specific weapon, I just wanted to say for all these weapon builds that I have, you may have to use certain guns to get certain attachments. And if you do not have those attachments for certain builds, that's totally fine. If you play tier 1 anyway, it will not matter. But basically look at my builds as like a blueprint and try to make your builds as close to this as possible. But with all that being said, we're going to talk about the VEL 46. So for the VEL 46, you have 4 unique challenges, and in the list from top to bottom in order of which you get them are going to be 50 kills, 50 ADS kills, 15 hipfires, and then 10 double kills. These are pretty easy. But now we're going to move on to my builds, and I have 3 builds for you guys today. And the first one right here is the main one, and basically what you're going to do is when you do your hipfires, you're just going to change the laser to one that helps you with hip firing. But talking about this build real quick, it's really good. It has great handling and great recoil control. You can get a mix of medium to close range gunfights, but with all SMGs in this game, you don't really want to venture out too far in terms of ranges because all the ARs in this game are going to outslay the subs. But speaking of ranges, we're going to talk about my long shot build for platinum. And basically what I did here was swap out the stock and the muzzle. But one thing I will add here is when doing long shots, you may want to have a sight on this. So if you do prefer an optic while doing long shots, you can take off the rear grip and put any optic that you want. Moving on to headshots for polyatomic. This is the build I have. It's basically my original build, and I just wanted to bring this up here. If you want to use the regular build for headshots and you like the iron sights, that's 100% okay. I just wanted to bring up this option just in case people preferred using optics when going for headshots. But that's it for the VEL 46. Now we're going to move on to the MX9. So the 4 challenges for the MX9, going from top to bottom in order of which you unlock them, is 50 kills, 10 double kills, 20 mounted, and 30 crouch kills. This is pretty simple. The mounted kills are going to be a little bit annoying. If you are struggling with mounted kills, what I always say is use a deployable shield. This will give you a little bit more freedom in mounting anywhere that you want. But let's talk about my setups. And we have 3 setups for you to hear today. This one is my normal build. This gun is a really good mid-range alternative if you don't like using the other SMGs. I think the MX9 isn't really that bad for like a slow shooting SMG. But we're going to be talking about our long shot build now, and basically what I did was take off our laser and put a muzzle on, and this is our suppressor to extend our range. And then just like with the MP7, what I would do is either take off the comb or the rear grip and then put that optic on for long shots if you prefer that. But now we're going to move on to our headshot build, and this is basically my normal build minus the rear grip, and we slapped an optic on, and you should have no problem getting headshots with this build. But that's all for the MX9. Now we're going to move on to the Lockman sub, aka the MP5. The 4 challenges for the Lockman sub in order from top to bottom in which you unlock them are going to be 50 kills, 10 double kills, 50 suppressor kills, and 10 hipfires. And right off the bat, for suppressor kills, you're just going to put on the first suppressor that you get, the earliest one, just so you can get those kills out of the way as you continue to level up the gun, because overall it doesn't matter which one you have. But in terms of the build, this is what I use normally, and honestly this is going to have a little bit of kick but have really good handling. And now we're going to talk about my long shot build. And with this build, we put on a suppressor, changed the stock, and then took off the laser and put an optic on. And basically with this, I really wanted to make it really accurate, so when you're shooting long range, regardless if you're playing core or hardcore, a lot of those shots will be easier to hit. And then we're going to move on to my polyatomic build for headshots. And basically this is my normal build, except I took off the stock and put an optic on. And if you are fine with using iron sights, definitely use iron sights, but for all my headshot builds, I just recommend using an optic, because for most people that's going to help them. But that's all for the MP5. We're going to move on to talking about the BAS-P. Now the 4 challenges for the BAS-P, top to bottom in order of which you unlock them, are going to be 50 kills, 50 ADS, 10 double kills, and 15 hip fires. And now let's look at my build. So for this, you're just going to change your laser to a hip fire laser. And honestly, this build right here is basically the competitive build, just with the added laser, because lasers are not allowed in that. And honestly, this build is really, really good. And now we're going to move on to my long shot build for platinum. And basically what I did here was we changed out the muzzle, took off the underbarrel, put an optic on, and took off the stock and put a barrel on. And basically what we're doing is giving us a nice sight picture with the optic and extending our range. It's pretty simple. But now we're going to talk about my headshot build for polyatomic. And this is just my normal build. I took off the underbarrel and put an optic. This build is actually pretty good to use normally. The reason why I use the underbarrel for my normal build over the optic is just because it's just a free attachment. It has literally 0 negatives. And yes, putting an optic on will slow your ADS just by a bit, but for headshots, this really won't matter. So I like to have an optic on. And like I said, for the other guns, having an optic is just going to make your life a little bit easier. But that's all for the BAS-P. Now we're going to be talking about the FSS Hurricane. The 4 challenges for the FSS Hurricane, in order in top to bottom in which you unlock it, are going to be 50 kills, 50 suppressor, 10 ADS, and 30 prone. Now with the suppressor kills, you can either put on the integrated suppressor for the barrel, or you could put an actual suppressor on the muzzle. But with that being said, we're going to talk about my setup. And for this gun, it's a little bit slower, but it is a medium range beast, depending on which gun you fight against, because obviously like ARs are OP right now and subs are going to get smoked. But for the most part, this gun will beat out other SMGs at long range. Now moving on to our long shot build, I chose to not have a sight with this, but if you do want to have a sight, take off the rear grip and put the optic on. For me personally, I think the FSS has really good iron sights, so I did not opt to use an optic, but if you want to, definitely go for it. And then this is my headshot build, and it's basically my normal build. I just wanted to include this, that hey, if you want to use this gun with the optic, this is what you would do. So basically what we did here is take off the rear grip and put the optic on from my normal build. And honestly, you shouldn't have too much of a problem getting headshots with this gun. It's extremely accurate, and regardless if you're using an optic or an iron sight, they both are great. So that's all for the Hurricane. Now we're going to move on to the Minibak, aka the Bison. The 4 challenges for the Bison, going from top to bottom in which you unlock them, are going to be 50 kills, 10 doubles, 10 ADS, and 15 point blanks. Now if you're struggling with point blanks, just jump at people, try to get close to them. If you're playing shipment, this will not matter. Point blanks are extremely annoying, but eventually you will get them done. But let's talk about my build. So for my build, I opted to use an iron sight build. When I was doing this gun normally, I felt that I wanted to have an iron sight, but now looking back at it and making my builds for this video, I went to not have an optic and tried to do more recoil control, because this gun shoots left to right a lot. So this gun will be a little bit slower, and the bullet velocity on this gun is trash. You're literally shooting a paintball gun. But the build I went with here is definitely, in my opinion, the best. But let's talk about our long shot build, and this is where we changed our stock and our muzzle to help with recoil and range extending. And this build is actually really good for long range. You shouldn't have any problems getting any kills, especially in tier 1. But now we're going to move on to my headshot build, and it's basically my normal build, except that I took off the rear grip and put an optic on. Just like for a bunch of subs in this game, for a bunch of builds I've made in this video, you can definitely use this one as a main build if you prefer to have an optic on this gun, because I know a lot of people may not like the iron sights, and this is pretty much the build that I used when golding this gun. But that's it for the Bison. Now we're going to move on to the PDSW, and the 4 challenges for the PDSW in order from top to bottom in which you unlock them are going to be 50 kills, 50 ADS, 15 hip fires, and 10 point blanks. For someone like me, I hate point blanks and I hate hip fire kills. This is very annoying, but all you got to do is change your laser to a hipfire laser and then jump at people and just hope that when you kill someone, they're really close to you and it's a point blank. But let's talk about my build, and this is the P90 build that I used. This gun sucks in my opinion. I think this is actually the worst SMG in the game in my opinion. I think it's like the Vel 46 but a lot worse, and I already dislike that gun, so any of these builds are not going to save this gun in my opinion. But let's move on to my long shot build, and we pretty much changed this setup completely. We added a barrel that gives you even more range, added a suppressor that gives you more range, and then put an optic on. You have 50 bullets with this gun, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem killing someone with one clip, even though this gun is a pea shooter. But let's move on to my headshot build, and it's basically my normal build except that we took off 2 ADS attachments, put on an optic, and put on the muzzle, basically making it so you have a good sight picture and you have less recoil. And this build is definitely good for headshots. So that's it for the PDSW. Now we're going to talk about the Fennec 45. The 4 challenges for the Fennec in order top to bottom in which you unlock them are going to be 50 kills, 30 crouch, 15 behind, and 10 double kills. These are pretty easy. You just have to crouch, and then if you're struggling with the behind kills, just camp a little bit more, let people walk past you. You could run ghost or like dead silence to help you out with that, but overall it should not be that hard to do. But let's talk about my builds, and I only have 2 of them. And this is the first one. Now, if you do want to have an optic on for headshots, because this build right here is one I would use for regular and for polyatomic, just take off the rear grip and put an optic on. But this build shreds people at close range. It's an absolute monster. But now we're going to talk about my long shot build. But for this loadout, we took off the laser and the stock and put on a barrel and an optic. Now, basically, what you can do is you can change the muzzle to any of the muzzles that I have for the other SMGs in this video. But the reason why I didn't do that for this build is because of the recoil with this gun is horrible at long range. So my thought process was, you're gonna have to hit people like 10 to 15 times anyway. Might as well make the shots as straight as possible. So if you're not playing tier 1 for this gun, good luck, because this shit was horrible. But that's all for the Vector. It's definitely a monster. But now we're gonna talk about the newest SMG, and that's gonna be the BAS-P. Now the 4 challenges for the BAS-P are 50 kills, 15 hipfires, 15 behind, and 50 suppressors. Just like I said in this video, put a hipfire laser on for the hipfires. If you're having a hard time with the behind kills, definitely just camp a little bit more. And then for the suppressor kills, the first suppressor you unlock, or the earliest time you can have a suppressor for this gun, definitely just put it on. It really should not matter which one you have. But let's talk about my build. And this build is a close range monster. I definitely think this is one of the best subs, but that's really not saying a lot because a lot of the subs are garbage. But this build definitely fries at close range. One thing you can do for this build is take off the underbarrel and put an optic on if you really want, and you're going to see that build in a bit later. But moving on to my long shot build, basically we put on range extending attachments and an optic. This build is definitely a laser beam, especially for this gun, and you shouldn't have that hard of a time, especially in tier 1. Then now we're going to talk about my headshot build, and this is exactly what I talked about at the beginning with taking off the underbarrel and putting an optic on. Definitely do this if you prefer the optic for headshots, or use the first build. It really does not matter. This gun is going to be really easy to do for headshots because of how good it is, in my opinion. But that's all of the SMGs for this video. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure you share it to your friends and leave a like and subscribe. Anyways, guys, good luck with your grind, and thanks for watching.